My name is Claire Bennett, and I'm an IT specialist. Not the kind you see in movies. No leather jackets or hacking into government databases here. Just me, a laptop, and a knack for solving problems that most people would rather ignore. I've been working at Apex Tech Solutions for 6 years now, ever since I graduated from college with nothing but a degree and a dream of making something out of myself. It wasn't easy getting this job back then. It was one of those positions where they had over 200 applicants and somehow I stood out. Or maybe I just got lucky. Either way, I took it as my chance to prove myself. Apex Tech Solutions isn't your run-of-the-mill tech company. We're not building apps or designing flashy websites. We handle server farms. Massive ones. The kind that power entire corporations, store terabytes upon terabytes of data, and keep businesses running smoothly without anyone noticing. Our clients trust us because we don't mess around when it comes to security and reliability. And let me tell you, there's something deeply satisfying about knowing that if our servers go down, so does half the financial district. That responsibility used to make me feel important, like I was part of something bigger than myself. But lately, things have changed. The trouble started with him, Daniel Whitaker, the CEO's son. You know the type, the golden child who walks into a room expecting everyone to bow down simply because his last name matches the plaque on the building. He didn't work his way up through the ranks like the rest of us did. Oh no, he waltzed right in after finishing some prestigious MBA program, armed with theories he'd read in textbooks but never tested in real life. To be fair, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt at first. Maybe he'd surprise us all and turn out to be more than just another entitled, rich kid playing executive. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Daniel had this air about him, like nothing could touch him. He strutted through the office like he owned the place, which technically he did thanks to Daddy's money, and treated employees like disposable cogs in his machine. If someone made a mistake, even a small one, he'd call them into his office and tear them apart. No constructive criticism, no second chances. Just pure humiliation wrapped up in a polished veneer of professionalism. At first, I thought I was safe. After all, I kept my head down, did my job well, and avoided drawing attention to myself. But apparently, even that wasn't enough. It happened during one of our quarterly reviews, a routine meeting where each department head presents updates to upper management. My team and I were responsible for maintaining the integrity of our largest client's server farm, a project worth $60 million annually. These weren't just any servers. They housed critical infrastructure for hospitals, banks, and government agencies. A single outage could cost lives, not just profits. So naturally, I took my role very seriously. When it was my turn to present, I walked into the conference room feeling confident. I'd prepared thoroughly, double-checked every detail, and rehearsed my points until I knew them by heart. As I began explaining how we'd optimize performance while cutting costs, Daniel interrupted me almost immediately. "This seems inefficient," he said, pointing to a graph on the screen. His tone was dismissive, dripping with condescension. Surely there's a better way to allocate resources. I blinked, taken aback. The strategy I'd outlined wasn't just efficient, it was cutting edge. We'd implemented new algorithms that reduced latency by 15%, saving both time and energy. I opened my mouth to explain further, but before I could get a word out, Daniel cut me off again. "Honestly, Claire, I expected more from someone in your position." His words hit like a punch to the gut. Not only had he dismissed months of hard work, but he'd done it in front of the entire leadership team. My cheeks burned as I forced a smile and continued my presentation, though I could feel my confidence crumbling. After the meeting ended, Daniel pulled me aside. "You're too cautious," he said, his voice low but sharp. "We need bold moves, not baby steps." Then came the line that still echoes in my mind whenever I think about that day. "Maybe you're not cut out for this level of responsibility." Those words stayed with me long after I returned to my desk, gnawing at my self-esteem like termites eating away at wood. Things escalated quickly after that. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began micromanaging my projects, questioning every decision I made. He demanded daily reports, insisted on being copied on every email, and held impromptu meetings to grill me about progress. It felt less like oversight and more like sabotage. Every suggestion I offered was shot down, every success minimized. Meanwhile, his behavior toward other employees grew increasingly toxic. He berated colleagues in public, belittled their ideas, and created an atmosphere of fear and resentment. People stopped speaking up in meetings, afraid of attracting his wrath. Morale plummeted, and productivity followed suit. Then came the final straw. One Friday afternoon, I received an email summoning me to Daniel's office. My stomach churned as I made my way down the hall, already dreading what awaited me. When I entered, he barely looked up from his phone. "Take a seat," he muttered, scrolling absently. For several minutes, he ignored me completely, letting the tension build until it became unbearable. Finally, he set the device aside and fixed me with a cold stare. "I've decided to restructure the IT department," he announced, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. "Your position is being eliminated effective immediately." My jaw dropped. "What? Why?" He shrugged, as if firing someone were no different than ordering lunch. "Budget cuts. Nothing personal. Nothing personal." I repeated, incredulous. "I've given 6 years of my life to this company. 6 years of late nights, weekends, and sacrifices, all for you to toss me aside like I'm expendable." His expression hardened. "Careful, Claire. Don't burn bridges you might need later." Burn bridges? The audacity of that statement left me speechless. Here was a man who'd systematically dismantled everything I'd worked for, stripped away my dignity, and now expected me to thank him for it? Something inside me snapped. Anger bubbled to the surface, hot and unrelenting, and for the first time in my career I let it show. "You want to talk about burning bridges?" I shot back, leaning forward. "Fine. Let's talk about what happens when people treat others like garbage. About how karma has a funny way of catching up to you. Because, mark my words, Daniel, this isn't over." With that, I stormed out of his office, slamming the door behind me. My hands trembled as I packed up my belongings, tears streaming down my face. Co-workers whispered condolences as I passed, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. All I could think about was the injustice of it all, the sheer unfairness of losing everything I'd built because of one man's ego. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen. Sleep eluded me, replaced by a restless energy that demanded action. I couldn't just let this slide. I wouldn't. Somewhere deep inside, a plan began to form, a risky, dangerous idea that might destroy me or save me. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. Daniel Whitaker wasn't going to get away with treating people like pawns in his game. The next morning, I woke up with clarity. Revenge wasn't just an option anymore, it was a necessity. And I had the perfect weapon at my disposal, the $60 million server farm. I spent the entire weekend holed up in my apartment, barely eating or sleeping. My mind raced with possibilities, scenarios, and worst-case outcomes. The server farm was Daniel's pride and joy, or at least it was supposed to be. He talked about it constantly during meetings, boasting about its cutting-edge technology and how it put Apex Tech Solutions ahead of the competition. But what he didn't realize, what no one else realized except those of us who worked directly on it, was that I knew every single line of code running through that system. Every firewall, every encryption protocol, every backup schedule. For 6 years, I had poured my heart into making sure that server farm ran like clockwork. Now, I was going to use that knowledge against him. But revenge isn't as simple as flipping a switch or pulling a plug. If I wanted to make this count, if I wanted to truly hit Daniel where it hurt, I needed precision. A full-scale shutdown would cause chaos, sure, but it wouldn't necessarily point back to him. No, this had to be subtle, calculated, something that would unravel slowly enough for him to feel the weight of his own arrogance crashing down around him. By Monday morning, I had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but nothing ever is when you're operating on adrenaline and anger. I started by creating a fake identity, a shell account buried deep within the company's internal systems. Using old credentials I'd saved, and yes, maybe a few tricks I picked up along the way, I set up a ghost user with admin-level access. This account wouldn't show up in any logs unless someone went looking for it specifically, and even then, they'd need to know exactly what they were searching for, which meant Daniel wouldn't find it until it was far too late. Next came the payload, a series of automated scripts designed to introduce tiny glitches into the server farm's operations. These weren't catastrophic failures, they were more like paper cuts. Random slowdowns here, minor data corruption there. enough to frustrate clients without tipping them off that something malicious was happening. Over time, these issues would escalate, growing worse and harder to diagnose. And because everything was routed through Daniel's department, all fingers would eventually point to him. After all, he'd been the one micromanaging my projects, overriding my recommendations, and insisting on bold moves instead of caution. When the problems spiraled out of control, who do you think upper management would blame? The hardest part wasn't writing the code. It was resisting the urge to go bigger. There were moments when I considered locking him out entirely, wiping the servers clean, or exposing sensitive client data online. But I stopped myself each time. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about teaching a lesson. I wanted Daniel to suffer, yes, but I also wanted him to understand why he was suffering. More importantly, I wanted him to know that I was the one pulling the strings. On Tuesday, I executed phase one of my plan. Sitting in a coffee shop across town with my laptop open, I watched as the first glitch appeared in the system. A routine file transfer between two servers stalled unexpectedly, forcing IT staff to scramble for answers. From my perch at a corner table, I sipped my latte and smiled. Phase 1 complete. By Wednesday, another issue surfaced. A database query returned incomplete results, causing confusion among developers. Again, I observed from afar, careful not to draw attention to myself. Each new problem added another brick to the wall I was building around Daniel, and soon he'd be trapped inside. At work, I played the role of concerned ex-employee perfectly. I called former colleagues under the guise of checking in, asking casually if everything was running smoothly. They confided in me, venting their frustrations about the growing list of technical hiccups. It's weird, one of them said. None of this makes sense. Everything was fine before. Their voices trailed off, but I could hear the unspoken implication. Before you left, that stung more than I cared to admit, but I pushed the feeling aside. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about justice. Meanwhile, Daniel remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath his feet. In fact, he seemed almost proud of himself for streamlining the IT department. He strutted through the office like a peacock, congratulating his team on their efficiency. Little did he know his efficiency was about to become his downfall. As the week wore on, the pressure began to mount. Clients started calling, complaining about delayed transactions and missing files. Upper management demanded explanations, and Daniel found himself caught in a whirlwind of blame. At first, he tried to deflect responsibility, pointing fingers at his subordinates and accusing them of incompetence. But the more he lashed out, the clearer it became that he had no idea what was really going wrong. The cracks in his facade were starting to show, and it was only a matter. As the cracks in Daniel's facade widened, I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and unease. Watching him squirm was exactly what I'd envisioned, but it wasn't enough to erase the toll this had taken on me or my former colleagues. The server farm issues were causing real problems for clients now. Delayed payments, corrupted files, and even temporary outages that disrupted critical services. Hospitals reported delays in accessing patient records. Banks struggled with transaction errors. It was sobering to realize how much depended on the systems I'd helped build, and how much damage I was indirectly responsible for. But then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, as I sat at my kitchen table monitoring the chaos from afar, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Rachel, one of my closest friends from Apex Tech Solutions. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Claire, we need your help." I froze. "What do you mean?" "We know it's you," she said softly. "The glitches, the slowdowns, they're too precise, too deliberate. And honestly, we don't blame you. Not after everything Daniel did to you. But this has gone too far. People are losing faith in the company, and some of our biggest clients are threatening to pull out. Lives are being affected, Claire. You have to stop this." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. For days, I justified my actions by telling myself that Daniel deserved every bit of suffering he got. But hearing Rachel say those words, asterisk lives are being affected asterisk, made me see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about punishing Daniel anymore. Innocent people were paying the price for his mistakes and mine. That night, I lay awake, wrestling with guilt. Revenge had felt so righteous in the beginning, but now it tasted bitter. What started as a way to reclaim my dignity had spiraled into something darker, more destructive than I'd intended. If I didn't act quickly, the consequences could be irreversible, not just for Daniel, but for everyone involved. The next morning, I made a decision. I sent Rachel a single text. Asterisk, meet me at the old diner downtown. Bring whoever you trust. Asterisk, within hours. A small group of my former coworkers gathered around a booth, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. They looked to me for answers, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't hide behind lies or half-truths. I confessed everything: the fake account, the scripts, the plan to ruin Daniel. To my surprise, no one yelled or stormed out. Instead, they listened quietly, nodding along as if they'd suspected all along. When I finished, Rachel leaned forward. "Okay," she said firmly. "Here's the deal. We fix this together. But we also make sure Daniel pays for what he's done. No more secrets, no more sabotage. Just straight-up justice." Over coffee and hastily scribbled notes, we devised a new plan. Using the same backdoor access I'd created, I disabled the rogue scripts and restored the server farm to full functionality. Then, working alongside my former team, I documented every glitch, every error, and traced them back to decisions Daniel had made since taking over the department. His reckless cost-cutting measures, his refusal to listen to expert advice, his obsession with bold moves over stability. It all painted a damning picture of incompetence and negligence. Armed with irrefutable evidence, we scheduled an emergency meeting with the CEO, Daniel's father. Walking into that boardroom felt surreal. The man who had once praised my work during quarterly reviews now stared at me across the table, his expression unreadable. Beside him sat Daniel, smug as ever, clearly expecting yet another round of excuses from his beleaguered staff. Rachel stepped forward first, presenting our findings in calm, professional tones. As she spoke, Daniel's confidence began to waver. When it was my turn to present the technical details, I watched his face pale with each slide I clicked through. By the time I reached the final piece of evidence, a timestamped log showing how his directives had directly caused the most severe disruptions, he was visibly sweating. The CEO listened silently, his jaw tightening with every revelation. When we finished, he turned to Daniel, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Is this true?" he asked. Daniel stammered, trying to deflect blame, but the proof was undeniable. In the end, the board voted unanimously to remove him from his position. He wasn't fired outright, that would have raised too many questions, but he was reassigned to a symbolic role with no real authority. Meanwhile, the CEO personally apologized to me and offered me my old job back, along with a promotion to lead the IT department. I declined, not because I didn't want the job, but because I realized I needed a fresh start. With the severance package I negotiated, I launched my own consulting firm, helping small businesses secure their networks and optimize their infrastructure. My former colleagues stayed in touch, cheering me on as I built something entirely my own. As for Daniel, he disappeared from the corporate scene almost overnight. Rumor has it he's now managing a chain of car washes somewhere in Florida, a fitting fall from grace for someone who thought he was untouchable. Looking back, I can't say I'm proud of everything I did. Revenge isn't a clean path, and it comes with costs I'll carry for the rest of my life. But in the end, justice prevailed, not through anger or destruction, but through honesty, teamwork, and a shared commitment to doing the right thing. And sometimes, that's the happiest ending we can hope for.